The Murfreesboro Municipal Airport hosted a very special visitor recently with the arrival of a 1937 American Airlines Douglas Commercial 3, or DC-3. It was one of the most popular aircrafts in American Airlines history, and this one was called the Flagship Detroit.
The name, a lot of people wonder why Detroit. Well, that's the name that American gave it when it was first introduced. American named each of the airplanes as they acquired them after one of their major cities that they served.
In the 1930s, the airline passenger service entered a new era. The construction of this new design would overcome obstacles such as distance, geography, and geopolitical barriers of other airplanes. This specific plane is the oldest flying DC-3 in the world, and Dave Gorell talks about how his foundation acquired it.
The airplane was first delivered to American Airlines in March of 1937. It looked just like this when it came out of the factory in Santa Monica. American flew it in their system for 10 years. We found it in 2004. It had been an agricultural sprayer for a while, and the interior had been completely gutted.
Gorell is a member of the Flagship Detroit Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving the legacy of the DC-3.
And we got together, raised enough money to buy the airplane from the owner at the time. We were able to put together the interior, make it look just like she did back in 1937. Hours and hours of volunteer mechanic work, people who really know what they're doing when it comes to working on airplanes in general and learning about old airplanes like this. So she's probably in as good a shape or better than when it first rolled out of the factory. The DC-3 was really a unique airplane because that was the first time an airline had ever owned an airplane that could make money on its own. Up until that time, airlines had to have contracts with the federal government for mail in order to survive. This one was big enough, had 21 seats, and the 21 seats they could sell at a high enough price. In those years, around $400 to go cross-country. $400 is probably equivalent to about $4,500 today. So that's you can see how prices actually have come down quite a bit. But it was first-class travel then, too. The only people who flew in those days were quite wealthy. It became the way to move people across country, and that generated what became commercial aviation as we know it today.
In the 1930s, electricity wasn't as widely used as it is today, so everything operated with hydraulics, which is the movement of liquid through pipes. The instrumentation of the DC-3 set the standards for the more modern planes that followed.
This was a very early attempt to have retractable landing gear, and so the mechanism was extremely complex by today's standards. There are 7 steps to raising the gear, or 7 steps to lower the gear in this airplane. So there's no automation. The pilots had to pilot. That's the big difference.
It was almost like learning to fly all over again, because you've got a tail wheel on here. That's completely different. On this one, you spend a lot of time paying attention to the engines. We baby the engines, and so we do a lot of engine management that we never had to do in an airliner. That's all pretty much taken care of by the engine's own electronics. And you fly this. There is no autopilot. So this is a really rewarding type of airplane to fly. It tells you when you've done it right, it tells you when you've done it wrong, and that's a good thing.
All of the round instruments are basically original. The rectangular boxes are modern avionics. We have to have the modern stuff to operate in the modern air traffic control system. And as you can see, the nose had to be high to keep the propellers clear of the ground. So you're pretty high off the ground for an airplane that only carried 21 passengers.
Having visitors such as the crew of the Flagship Detroit helps highlight the Murfreesboro Municipal Airport and attract residents to the facility.
We were just completing a bunch of construction, so they were able to come in with this aircraft and show it off today, and we have some beautiful weather for it. To recognize and to learn some of the aviation history, because this was a really important aircraft for the industry and for America. I've studied a lot of aviation history, and this is definitely one of those aircraft that was key to our airline history here in American Airlines, and especially if you go back to World War II, supporting the troops and all that around the world.
Gorell invites people to his website at flagshipdetroit.org to learn more about this legendary plane and the nonprofit organization.
We have a membership program in the foundation. For $100, people can become a member, and that guarantees that they get to go for a flight when we have the airplane in the vicinity wherever they are. We go to air shows, we go to appearances at various airports, and we just love to talk about the history of these airplanes.